Hi there, this is Unmesh and today we're going to learn how to cover up messy background in Photoshop. You see, there are a lot of ways of covering up backgrounds and one of them is actually changing the background altogether. However, today we're not going to do that. We will extend the background, as you can see. It's going to be fun, so without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop and here we have our image with a lot of distractions. As you can see in the background, there are plants and there are seeds and I don't know, rods, and we have to remove them all. So here's how to do it. This water actually is also distracting. So what are we going to do? We're going to extend this wall all the way to the top. And how can we do that? First off, make 2 copies of the background layer. Press Ctrl or Command J twice. Okay, Ctrl or Command J one more time. We have 2 copies. Now, you can name the top one as subject because in the top one, we will cut out the subject, and the bottom one, you can name that background or wall or anything that you like. We can name this wall. All right. So selecting the subject, we have to cut out the top area of the subject because we will be replacing the background and we don't want the subject to be disturbed. So we will keep the subject on its separate layer. Okay, so the best way to make a selection in this case, now there are tons of ways of making selections and changing backgrounds. I would highly recommend you watching this complete playlist on compositing if you really want to get into that. So making a selection or changing the background, watch this playlist. All right, so we're going to use the pen tool in this case. If there were a lot of hairs and frizzy hair and stuff, I would recommend using the select and mask or maybe using channels. All the videos are there. Depending upon how your subject is, you will make the selection accordingly. Now in this case, we don't have to make the complete selection of her, just the top area, because we will not be replacing the background or the wall right in here, down here, but only at the top. So let's start making a selection right from here. That would be fine. Okay, so we will use the pen tool to do that. Press P for the pen tool or just click on in here. All right, so let's zoom in quite a bit and start making a path. Okay, so click, and by the way, there's already a video on using the pen tool. Watch this video on mastering the pen tool in 30 minutes. So there you go, just make a point, click and make a point again, and click and drag. Click and drag. What that does, it creates handles, creates smooth curves. Okay, click and drag. Anytime you want to take a sharp turn, what I personally do is that I click and drag. For example, I want to take a sharp turn from here. I would hold the Alt key or the Option key if you're using a Mac. Click here. It removes the handle in the direction of the path, and then you can make a sharp turn right from here. You can watch this video. It really goes in depth on how to use the pen tool. I would highly recommend that. Okay, so let's make a selection around it. Also, at any point of time, and this is the greatest advantage of the pen tool, at any point of time, if you want to adjust something, for example, the selection doesn't look right here. So I would hold the Control or Command, click here, and adjust it the way I like it. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, so you can do whatever you want. So once you make a selection all over her, actually we are making a path. Once we make a path all over her, you would close it right here. Okay, now it shows up in the Paths tab. So if you cannot find the Paths tab, you would go to Windows and then make sure Paths is checked. All right, now in the Paths tab, whatever path you're working on will be the work path. If you rename it, that path will be saved. I've already created a path around the subject so that I don't have to bore you through the complete process. So let's go ahead and delete the work path. So I have this already done. So what I would do right now, after you create the path around her, you would hold the Control or Command and then click on that path. That makes a selection around it. Now what we would do, we would come back to the layers and then simply click on the mask button. Now we have her on a separate layer. Let's turn both of these on. We have her on a separate layer, but there's a little bitty area left right here. No problem at all. We can delete that as well. So we can use the brush or anything that you like to completely remove that. So I'm going to use the quick selection tool and let's make it a little smaller. And then let's just simply paint over this area to kind of remove it. Let's see how it does. Not bad, not bad. All right, So it does a pretty good job, not bad. Now once you do make a selection, simply fill that area in black, because black hides, white shows up. So with the mask selected, make sure the foreground color is black. You can press X to toggle between the foreground and the background, and then Alt backspace or Option delete to fill that up. Okay, now that is gone, press Ctrl or Command D to deselect. Now as you can see, the selection is not perfect, no problem at all. We will take the brush, make it a little smaller, and just simply paint in back with white. Make sure the flow is at 100%. Okay, just kind of refining it. Okay, that looks great. Here, no problem at all. Done. Looks perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be really perfect because we will be replacing the background anyway, and there will be some elements of it still there. Like some of the walls will still be there. Let's make it a little smaller so that we can go around the corners. Let's zoom in a fair bit. All right, that looks wonderful. Now there's a little bit of area left over here, so we would go with white. Okay, now this looks wonderful. You can turn these back on. Now let's turn off the subject and let's come to the wall. Now in this layer, we will completely remove the subject and build the background. And to do that, we will select the lasso tool or the polygonal lasso tool, whichever is your favorite, and make a selection outside the subject, just outside the subject, around the subject. Leave a little bit of gap outside the subject. Okay, so something like this. Whenever you want to move, you already know what to do. Hold the spacebar, the cursor changes to a hand, then you move and then you release the spacebar. As you can see, I'm leaving a little bit of gap. So leave a little bit of gap, make a selection around her. Now as we come closer to the shadow underneath her, let me just go around her feet. Okay, you can select the shadow along with her. Really doesn't matter at the bottom, but make sure all of her is selected. Okay, now once we are done with this, any guesses what are we gonna do? Simple, go to Edit and then Fill. And we will try to replace it all at once by using Content Aware. So make sure you choose Content Aware, Mode Normal, Opacity 100. You don't want to preserve any transparency, so keep it unchecked. Color Adaptation is checked, hit OK. Let Photoshop do its job, some intelligent stuff. And it's gonna take a while, as you can see. It is a tedious job to figure out where to sample from, where to play, so on and so forth. Let's see how it does. Yeah, it has done a kind of not a pretty good job, but we can definitely use this as a starting point. All right, so we have to replace this particular area. This area is kind of messy. So what we can do, we have to figure out areas that we can replace it with. In this case, I can see that there's this nice area right over there. We can just copy it and place it over there. Let's try that. So we will select the rectangular marquee tool and let's make a selection as far as we can go, which looks perfect. This looks perfect, and then we will put it on its own layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J. Okay, now with the help of the Move tool, we will move it right over here. Ctrl or Command T, right click and choose Flip Horizontal. That looks more legible. All right, so we have to line it up properly just over this. Okay, and one of the ways of doing this is, first of all, hit the Enter or Return to let go of the transformation, those what do you call it, the transformation, yes, the transformation controls. Now once you let go of it, you can change the blend mode to difference. Okay, and then you can easily use that blend mode to line this up properly. Zoom in and you can use that to line it up properly. Now what you can also use, as you can see, it's not lining up very nicely. I would press Ctrl or Command T. Okay, right click on it and choose Distort, and then you can just distort it to match it. Okay, now let's do it in the left hand side. Make sure the lines are matching. So two things should happen. The lines should be matching, and the second thing, let's change the blend mode back to normal. The lines should be very straight. So let's pull up a guide. So how do we pull up a guide? Simple, just drag it up from the ruler. If you cannot see the ruler, press Ctrl or Command R. So R lets go of the ruler, Control or Command R brings back the ruler. So from the ruler, just pull up a guide, make sure this is straight, make sure this one is straight, this one is not straight. So we need to shape it up properly. Okay, just a tad bit. So I would press Control or Command T again, right click, distort, and make sure every line here is straight so that when we stretch it, it doesn't look bad. Okay, this one should be straight as well. So let's pull up a line. This one is already straight. Works great, works fine. Hit enter. All right, now to let go of the guides, you can just drag it to the left hand side, completely delete it. Or what you can also do, once you bring up a guide, you can hide it by pressing Control and semicolon. In Mac, that would be Command and semicolon, and the shortcut is on the screen. All right, now once you hide that, let's soften the edges. So let's create a mask. Click on the mask button, take the brush, make sure it is big, make sure it is soft, and then just start painting around the edges with black. So make sure the foreground color is black, and then just start painting around the edge to kind of make it soft. Okay. Top is not required, just the edge. Okay. All right. This looks wonderful. Now we need to make some adjustments over here. This doesn't look right. This area doesn't look right. No problem at all. Let's create a new layer, brand new layer. Select the clone stamp tool and make sure the sample is current and below. Why current and below? We do not want it to be in the current layer because the current layer doesn't have anything. If we sample from something, it just won't paint. If you try to sample it, it just won't paint because it has nothing. So select current and below so that it samples from the current layer as well as the layers which are beneath it. Which means that if you paint, it will also sample from that painted area which is in the current layer and every layer which is beneath it. Okay, so let's zoom in and let's kind of remove this line. Let's take a sample from here, line it up properly just like this in the preview. You see a preview and just remove it. Also, as you can see, there's a repetition of pattern. So you can just break that repetition by taking a sample from other area, just break that repetition like that. But I wouldn't suggest you do that now. Go back. I will give you one more better suggestion of that. Just cover up the areas which doesn't look nice. So I would do, okay, that looks great. I would take a sample from here, cover this area up, take a sample from there, cover that area up. Don't worry about the line which is beneath it, okay? This area is covered up, that area is covered up, this area needs to be covered up just a bit. There's a lot of lines as you can see. Let's take a sample. To take a sample, you would hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on it, and just paint. So this is the area it's sampling from, and this is the area that is painting. For example, if I take a sample from here by holding the Alt key or the Option key, click here, it takes a sample from that area, and if you paint there, see the plus icon over there? It means the area which is sampling from, and where the brush is, it's the area where it is sampling to. So plus is the area where it is copying from, and the brush is the area where it is copying to. It's just like a copy paste in a brush. Now once we have done all of that, let's even out the brightness. As you can see, some areas are dark, patchy, and some areas are bright. We have to take care of that. And to take care of that, let's create a curves adjustment layer. Okay, take it all up. We will just brighten the dark areas. Okay, select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Now we would take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white, and then zoom out and have a look. Which areas do you think are dark? So I would just simply paint on that area. Now it's very harsh, very harsh. So let's decrease the flow to around 3%, and let's paint on those areas which you think have gone really dark. Don't worry about the areas beneath this line because anyway we will remove those. Don't worry about those. Now you can take all the time in the world to do this. This is a time-consuming thing. You want to make sure everything is evened out because this wall will be extended all the way to the top. So make sure everything is evened out. Now only once everything is evened out, we will be able to break the pattern. Okay, so I think things are evened out, things are working great. Okay, I'm kind of satisfied with it. Let's have a look at the before and after. So this is the before with all the darks. This is the after, everything is matching. Now, let's do a little bit of inspection by creating a black and white adjustment layer. Click on the adjustment layer icon and choose black and white so that we can see the brights and the darks more properly. Okay, so I have 3 Adobe updates, just cancel that. Okay, all right, so let's zoom in. And I think this area has gone a little darker. So if I zoom out a little bit, I can see that this area is a little darker. So I'll have to brighten that up a little bit. Okay, what am I doing? I'm painting on this mask. We have to come back to this mask and paint over there. Okay, with white. Yeah, it looks better. Okay, there we go. Now, let's merge all of it. First of all, delete the black and white. This was just for seeing which areas are dark or bright, just for a better vision. Let's select all of them. First of all, how did I do that? Select one, hold the Control or Command, and click on the other ones. Or what you can do, you can select the first one, hold the Shift key, select the last one, and everything in the row will be selected. Then press Control or Command E. It merges all of it. Now, zoom in and break the pattern. This pattern is right in this case. In this case, there's a lot of patterns which are repeating. So to tackle that, we will use the patch tool. Right click here and choose the patch tool. If you cannot see the patch tool, if some other tools are selected, you would right click and choose the patch tool. Now, once the patch tool is selected, as you can see, pattern repetition, we will replace that. And for example, there's one more repetition right over here. So make a selection of that. Okay, make sure source is selected, diffusion 5, drag it and drop it into an area which this area can be replaced with. So for example, I can replace it with this area. Okay, maybe I'll select that area and replace it with this area, and maybe this area can be replaced with that area. That area was, I think, fine. And this area, there's a lot of repetition of this pattern, can be replaced with an area from here, right? So that works on that section. As you can see, there's a repetition again. Make a selection, simple stuff. Click and drag, drop. Now once that is done, press Control or Command D. Easy. And I think the pattern is now broken. Now all we need is just one strip. Just one perfect strip. So we would use the rectangular marquee tool and make one strip. Just like this. See, we didn't need anything below that line, so anything above that line is fine. Okay, this is just the strip we need. Now we will make a copy of that strip. Press Control or Command J. Put it on its own there. Now, make one more copy. I want the strip separately to be in another layer. It just avoids the confusion. Make one more copy of the same. Press Control or Command J again. With the help of the Move tool, move it all up, just place it on top of the other strip. You can, at this moment, you can just hide it, doesn't really matter. And you can also hide this one. Just place it up top. Control or Command T. Right click, flip vertical. You see, this matches. Now if we zoom in, there's a little bit of gap. I think there's a gap, so I'll just pull it a little down, doesn't really matter much. Now, okay, now let's make a copy of this again. Control or Command J and put it up top. Control or Command T, right click, flip vertical. And we will continue this process. Okay, Control or Command J, bring it up like that. Control or Command T, right click, flip vertical. And we have covered the wall. Now at this point you can turn this on. You can turn your subject on. You turn every layer on. Okay, so now we can make a group of all of this. Another way to make a group, we just learned another way to select all of them. Select the first one, hold the Shift key, select the last one. Everything in the row will be selected. Then we will press Control or Command J. Then let's create a mask by clicking on the mask button. White shows up, black hides. Remember that. Select the brush, make sure the foreground color is black, and just paint on the bottom areas. Flow 100%. Just bring all of that back, just like that. And there you go. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, so we have all the details back. All right, wonderful. Looks nice, doesn't it? Now what you can do, you can also bring in some shadows if you want to. So as you can see, it kind of lacks shadows. And at this point, what I also see, there's a repeated pattern in the wall, right? There's a repeated pattern, which I'm kind of not a big fan of. So to tackle the repeated pattern, we have to combine all those layers of the wall again. So let's open up the group and merge all of them. Okay, select all of them, Control or Command E. Let's merge all of them and let's turn this off for a moment, and now let's break the pattern. It's as easy as pie. So select the patch tool. You already know what to do. Make a selection of a repetition, replace it, done. Make a selection, replace it, done. There's a repetition over there, replace it, done. So I guess there's one more over here, one more over there, kind of replace it. Just play with it. Now once you just work with it and just go random with it, you'll be able to create that very easily. Here I see a lot of repetition, as you can see. Okay, just select, go random. Okay, break the repetition. As you can see, we have repeated those slides up one top the other. So it will happen that it will create a mirror effect. So remove all those mirror effect stuff. Go random. Now if you're looking for that pattern in the background, leave it as it is. But if you really want to make it realistic, like a wall and there's no pattern, perfect, this would be the best thing to do at this moment. I would select that, move it up top like that. I think that looks strange, so I will just leave it at that. And do the same right over there. See, there's a mirror effect. Okay, we have broken down the pattern over there. Let's break the pattern here as well. Select the patch tool again. Yep, it looks good. Yeah, it looks legible. Let's see on the far right. See the patterns repeating again and again 4 times. So let's work on them. Okay, great. Now once pattern is all clear, you can just turn the subject back on and we are ready. So we can name this group. Let's just collapse the group. We can name this group the wall or the background or whatever. Let's name it BG or the wall. Okay. Now above the wall, we want some shadow behind her. So we will create a curves adjustment layer. Pull it down like that. This will be creating a shadow. Select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Okay. Now select the brush and then simply just create a shadow on the side of her. Make sure the foreground color is white. White are the areas which shows up. Okay. Now we will have to remove it from the bottom. So we would paint the bottom with black. Be a little careful around here. Okay. All right. Okay. Now let's erase the extra shadows. Simple stuff. Now usually what happens is when you create a shadow using curves, it sometimes oversaturates that area. So there are 2 ways to tackle that. You can try to change the blend mode to luminosity, which means that it will only affect the brightness and not the color. In this case, this is making it pretty bad. So let's come back to normal. What you can also do, you can create a hue saturation adjustment layer and then decrease the saturation, but that decreases the saturation of the whole area. We want it to be limited just to this area. So we will create a clipping mask. Click on the button which creates a clipping mask. Or what you can also do, you can hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the line between these two. It also limits that just to that layer. So when you decrease the saturation, it only happens in that area. So you can just control the saturation or the hue for that area, make it a little reddish, and it looks much more natural. So let's have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Isn't that wonderful? Totally covers up the messy background. Now you can take all the time in the world to really create a great background. And here is our final result. So that's how to cover up messy background in Photoshop. It's super simple. Just look at your image. That's the one thing that you have to do. Look at your image. Second, look at what are the areas that you have available that you can use to replace the messy areas. And then use several Photoshop basic concepts and techniques to replace it. In this case, we just used common sense. We made a selection of the subject, we put it up top. Why did we do that? Because we didn't want to disturb the subject while we were creating the background. So we created that at the top with just the subject selected, and then we created the wall. We just built the wall. We made sure that everything was evened out, everything was straight. I'm just explaining you the concept because that is important. We made a strip, pasted it on its own layer, copied it up top, inverted that, and we repeated the process again and again till it filled up all over the canvas. Keep in mind that whenever we are cloning or taking a sample from an area, copying that area and using that sample to paint on some area to replace something, a pattern will be created. And if you leave that pattern just the way it is, it will give the audience a telltale sign that it was cloned out. So we need to break the pattern. And how can we break the pattern? Using the clone tool, patch tool again, right? So an eye for an eye. So that's how we easily covered the background. And then to make it more realistic, we added a little shadow using curves. And that's where the advantage of creating a separate layer for the subject helped. Because we had it on a separate layer. When we created the shadow, it didn't come over the subject. We created it behind, just beneath the subject. Beneath is the word. So that's all for this video. Hope this video helped, and if it did, make sure to give us a like, and also do not forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe, ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating. Thank you so much for watching, guys.